The ink on the contract her father signed 22 years ago was still as binding as the day Marianne Lewis came into this world, screaming her first breath in a dusty cabin outside Columbia, California, in 1867. And that same day her fate was sealed to a man she would come to fear before she ever knew his name. She stood now at the window of her family's modest ranch house, watching the dust rise from the road that led into town. Her 22nd birthday had passed 3 days ago, and with it came the reminder that in 1 month she would become Mrs. Marcus Thorne. The thought made her stomach turn. Marcus owned half the businesses in Columbia and most of the land surrounding it. He was 45 years old, cruel in his dealings, and known for leaving bruises on the girls who worked in his saloon. Her father owed him money, a debt so large it had consumed their family like a slow, burning fire. The only way to settle it was through her. "Marianne, stop staring out that window like a ghost," her mother called from the kitchen, her voice tired and resigned. "It will not change what must be done." Marianne turned away, her dark hair falling across her shoulders. She had tried everything. She had begged her father to find another way, offered to work herself to pay the debt, even considered running away in the dead of night. But Marcus had eyes everywhere, and her father was a broken man who saw no other option. The contract was ironclad, signed when her father was desperate and Marcus was opportunistic. She was the collateral for a loan that had kept their ranch afloat during the terrible drought of 1867, the same year she was born. The next morning, Marianne rode into Columbia to pick up supplies. The town was bustling with miners, ranchers, and travelers passing through on their way to San Francisco. She tied her horse outside the general store and tried to ignore the way people looked at her with pity. Everyone knew about her arrangement with Marcus Thorne. It was the worst-kept secret in Columbia. She was carrying a sack of flour to her horse when someone bumped into her, nearly knocking the sack from her arms. Strong hands caught it before it fell, and she looked up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. "My apologies, miss," the man said, his voice deep and warm. He was tall, with sun-bronzed skin and dark blonde hair that curled slightly at his collar. A worn hat sat tilted on his head, and he wore the clothes of a working cowboy, dusty from the trail. "I was not watching where I was going." "It's all right," Marianne managed, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. She took the flour sack from his hands, their fingers brushing briefly. "Yates Irving," he said, tipping his hat. "Just arrived in town yesterday. I am working at the Henderson Ranch west of here." "Marianne Lewis," she replied, unable to look away from his eyes. There was something kind in them, something honest that she had not seen in a man's gaze for a long time. "Well, Miss Lewis, I hope I did not cause you any trouble." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Perhaps I will see you around town." "Perhaps," she said softly, watching as he walked away toward the saloon. She stood there longer than she should have, the flour sack growing heavy in her arms, wondering why her heart was beating so fast. Over the next 2 weeks, Marianne found herself encountering Yates Irving more often than coincidence should allow. He was at the general store when she bought thread. He was watering his horse outside the church when she attended Sunday service. Each time they spoke a little longer, shared a little more. She learned he was 24 years old, that he had come from Texas after his parents died, seeking a fresh start in California. He was honest and hardworking, saving money to buy his own piece of land someday. "What about you?" he asked one afternoon as they stood in the shade outside the post office. "What are your dreams, Marianne?" She looked down at her hands. "My dreams do not matter much anymore." "Why would you say that?" His voice was gentle but insistent. "Everyone's dreams matter." She wanted to tell him everything, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she changed the subject, asking him about Texas, about the cattle drives he had been on, about anything that was not her own trapped life. But Yates was observant. He noticed the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, the way she glanced over her shoulder as if expecting someone. He heard the whispers in town about Marcus Thorne and his upcoming wedding. One evening, after asking the right questions to the right people, he learned the truth. The next time he saw Marianne, his expression was different, serious, determined. "I know about the contract," he said without preamble. They were alone by the creek that ran behind the town, a place she had come to think of as theirs, though she knew it was foolish to think that way. Marianne felt her face go hot with shame. "Then you know there is nothing to be done about it." "There is always something to be done," Yates said, stepping closer. "You cannot marry him, Marianne. I have seen the way he treats people. He will hurt you." "And what would you have me do?" she asked, her voice breaking. "My father will lose everything. We will be ruined. Marcus will make sure of it." "Come away with me," Yates said suddenly, urgently. "We will leave tonight. I have some money saved. We can go north, start over where he cannot find us." Marianne stared at him, her heart pounding. "You barely know me. Why would you risk everything for me?" Yates reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "Because in the 2 weeks I have known you, I have seen more goodness and strength in you than I have seen in most people in a lifetime. Because when I look at you, I see my future, and it is a future I want. Because I am falling in love with you, Marianne Lewis, and I cannot stand by and watch you be given to a man who will destroy everything beautiful about you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her the way Yates was looking at her now, as if she was something precious and worth fighting for. "I cannot let my family suffer," she whispered. "The debt is real. If I run, Marcus will take everything from them." "Then we will find another way to pay the debt," Yates said. "But we will do it free from him. Trust me, Marianne, please." She looked into his blue eyes and saw something she had not felt in years, hope. "All right," she breathed. "I trust you." That night, Marianne packed only what she could carry. She left a letter for her parents, telling them she loved them but could not marry Marcus Thorne, that she would find a way to help them but she had to do it on her own terms. Her hands shook as she wrote, knowing the pain this would cause them but knowing more deeply that she would not survive a marriage to Marcus. Yates was waiting for her at the creek with 2 horses. In the moonlight, he looked like something out of a dream, solid and real and offering her a chance at a life she had never dared to imagine. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as he helped her mount. "I have never been more sure of anything," he replied, swinging up onto his own horse. "We ride north tonight, fast and far. By the time anyone realizes you are gone, we will be 2 days ahead of them." They rode through the night, following trails that wound through the Sierra Nevada foothills. Yates knew the land well, having traveled extensively during his cowboy days. He led them away from the main roads, through dense forests and across rushing streams. Marianne had never felt so alive. The night air was cool on her face, and the fear that had weighed on her for so long was beginning to lift, replaced by something that felt startlingly like freedom. By dawn, they stopped to rest the horses by a small lake surrounded by pine trees. Marianne slid from her saddle, her legs aching from the hard ride. "How are you holding up?" Yates asked, bringing her water from his canteen. "I am well," she said, though exhaustion was beginning to set in. "Thank you, Yates, for all of this." He smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We have a long way to go still, but we will make it." They rested for a few hours, taking turns keeping watch. When the sun was high overhead, they mounted again and continued north. Yates had a plan to reach a town called Nevada City, where he had friends who could help them find work and a place to stay. It was far enough from Columbia that Marcus's influence would not reach, but Marcus Thorne was not a man who accepted loss lightly. When he discovered Marianne was gone, his rage was terrible. He gathered a group of men, rough types who owed him favors or feared his retribution, and set out after them. He knew these mountains, knew the trails a fleeing couple might take. He was determined to bring Marianne back and make an example of the cowboy who had dared to steal what belonged to him. On their third day of travel, Yates spotted riders in the distance. His jaw tightened as he counted them. 6 men moving fast. "We need to move," he said urgently. "Now." They pushed their horses hard, veering off the trail into rougher country. The terrain became treacherous, rocky slopes and narrow passages that tested both riders and mounts. Behind them, the pursuers closed in. Marcus had hired trackers, men who could follow a trail over bare rock. As the sun began to set, Yates led them into a narrow canyon. "There is a place up ahead," he said, "an old miner's cabin. We can make a stand there if we have to." "A stand?" Marianne's voice was tight with fear. "Yates, they have guns. They will kill you." "They will have to catch us first," he said grimly. The cabin was half collapsed. Its roof caved in on one side, but it provided cover. Yates quickly moved their horses behind it, then positioned himself at the entrance with his rifle. Marianne crouched beside him, her heart hammering in her chest. "If something happens to me," Yates began, but Marianne cut him off. "Nothing is going to happen to you," she said fiercely. "We are getting through this together." He looked at her with such tenderness that her breath caught. "I love you, Marianne. I need you to know that." "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming easily because they were true. In just 3 weeks, this man had become everything to her. The riders appeared at the mouth of the canyon as darkness fell. Marcus Thorne sat at the front on a black stallion, his face twisted with anger. "Marianne Lewis," he shouted, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "You are promised to me. Come out now, and I will not harm your cowboy." "I am not your property, Marcus," Marianne called back, surprising herself with her own courage. "That contract was made without my consent." "I will not honor it." "Your father's debt says otherwise," Marcus snarled. "You have no choice in this matter." "There is always a choice," Yates said, his voice calm but carrying authority, "and she has chosen. Turn around and go home, Thorne. This does not have to end badly." Marcus laughed, a cold sound that held no humor. "You think you can just take what is mine and ride off into the sunset? I own this territory, boy. I own the law here. You will hang for kidnapping, and she will come back to me one way or another." "I was not kidnapped," Marianne shouted. "I left willingly. Your contract is nothing but paper and greed." For a long moment there was silence. Then Marcus made a gesture and his men began to spread out, surrounding the cabin. "Last chance," Marcus called. "Come out now or we come in." Yates tightened his grip on his rifle, but Marianne put her hand on his arm. "Wait," she said softly. An idea was forming in her mind, desperate and dangerous, but it might be their only chance. "Marcus," she called, "I will make you a deal." "You are in no position to make deals," Marcus replied. "Listen to me," Marianne insisted. "You want your money back, not me. You want your debt settled. Give me time to earn it back, and I will pay you every cent. But you must let me go free, and you must leave Yates alone." "And why would I agree to that?" Marcus asked, but there was a note of interest in his voice now. He was a businessman, after all, and business was always about the bottom line. "Because if you force me to marry you, I will make your life a living hell," Marianne said, her voice ringing with truth. "I will never submit to you. I will fight you every day for the rest of your miserable life. But if you let me do this my way, you will get your money back with interest, and you can walk away with your pride intact. Tell people I was not good enough for you. Tell them whatever you want, but let me go." There was a long pause. Marianne could feel Yates tense beside her, ready to fight if this went wrong. "How much time?" Marcus finally asked. 2 years, Marianne said, her mind racing. "Give me 2 years to earn back what my father owes you. I will send payments regularly. If I fail, I will come back and honor the contract. But if I succeed, you tear up that piece of paper and never bother my family again." "That is a lot of trust you are asking for," Marcus said slowly. "What guarantee do I have that you will not just disappear?" "You have my word," Marianne said. "And you know me well enough to know I keep my promises. This is the only way you get your money back, Marcus. If you try to take me by force, someone will die tonight, and it might be you. Is that worth it? Or would you rather walk away with a profitable deal?" Marcus sat on his horse, clearly weighing his options. His men waited for his signal, but Marianne could see the calculation in his eyes. He was angry, his pride was wounded, but he was also a practical man. A dead bride was worthless to him. $3,000, Marcus finally said. "That is what your father owes me with interest. You have 18 months to pay it back in full, or you come back and marry me as agreed. And if you miss a single payment, the deal is off." 18 months, Marianne agreed, her heart soaring with hope even as she realized the enormity of what she had just promised. $3,000 was a fortune. "You will have your money." "Put it in writing," Marcus demanded. "Tomorrow you come to Columbia and sign a new contract in front of witnesses. The cowboy stays away. This is between you and me." "Agreed," Marianne said. "But you and your men leave now. We will come to town tomorrow at noon." Marcus stared at the cabin for a long moment, then wheeled his horse around. 18 months, Marianne, not a day more. If you default, I will hunt you down no matter where you run." He spurred his horse forward, and his men followed, disappearing into the darkness. When they were gone, Marianne sagged against the cabin wall, her legs suddenly weak. Yates pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen," he murmured into her hair. "But $3,000, Marianne, that is an impossible sum." "Nothing is impossible if we work together," she said, pulling back to look at him. "We will find a way. I refuse to let Marcus Thorne control my life any longer." They spent the night in the cabin, taking turns keeping watch in case Marcus changed his mind. At first light, they rode back toward Columbia, but they did not go alone. Yates had an idea. They stopped at the Henderson ranch where Yates had been working. Mr. Henderson was a fair man, respected in the community. Yates explained the situation, and to Marianne's surprise, the rancher listened with sympathy. "Marcus Thorne is a snake," Mr. Henderson said bluntly. "He has been squeezing people dry for years, and no one has had the courage to stand up to him. I will help you, but not out of charity. I have been looking for someone to manage my horse breeding operation. It is hard work, but it pays well. If you both are willing to work hard, I can offer you jobs and a place to stay." "We will take it," Marianne said immediately. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. You will not regret this." At noon, they rode into Columbia together. The town was buzzing with news of Marianne's escape and her confrontation with Marcus. Some people looked at her with admiration, others with judgment, but she held her head high as she walked into the lawyer's office where Marcus was waiting. The new contract was drawn up precisely as they had agreed. 18 months to repay $3,000, with regular payments documented and witnessed. If she succeeded, the original contract would be destroyed and her father's debt cleared. If she failed, she would return to marry Marcus Thorne. Marcus signed with a flourish, his eyes cold as they met hers. "I hope you know what you are doing, Marianne. When you fail and come crawling back to me, I will not be as generous as I have been today." "I will not fail," Marianne said, signing her own name with a steady hand. 18 months from now, you and I will be done forever. They left Columbia that day and returned to the Henderson ranch. The work was indeed hard, harder than anything Marianne had ever done. She and Yates woke before dawn to tend the horses, break the young ones to saddle, train them for ranch work and sale. Mr. Henderson had connections with buyers throughout California, and quality horses brought good money. But it was not enough. Even with both of them working from sunup to sundown, the money came slowly. After 3 months, they had saved only $200. At this rate, they would never make the deadline. Marianne refused to give up. She took on additional work, sewing clothes for families in town, baking bread to sell at the general store. Yates began breaking horses for other ranches on his days off, building a reputation as one of the best horsemen in the territory. Every penny they earned went into a tin box they kept hidden under the floorboards of their small cabin on the Henderson property. As the months passed, something beautiful grew between them. Their love deepened through shared struggle and determination. On rare evenings when the work was done and they could rest, they would sit together watching the sunset, talking about the future they were fighting so hard to have. "When this is over," Yates said one night, his arm around her shoulders, "I am going to marry you properly. Not because of any contract or debt, but because I choose you and you choose me." "I would marry you tomorrow if we could," Marianne said, leaning into his warmth. "Contract or no contract, you are already my husband in my heart. And you are my wife," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Nothing will change that. We will get through this, Marianne. I promise you." They did marry quietly with Mr. and Mrs. Henderson as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony held in the ranch house parlor, but to Marianne it was more meaningful than any grand wedding could have been. She wore a simple blue dress, and Yates wore his best shirt. They spoke their vows with tears in their eyes, and when Yates kissed her as his wife, Marianne felt truly free for the first time in her life. But the specter of the debt still hung over them. 12 months had passed, and they had saved only $1,400. They were making progress, but not fast enough. Then fortune smiled on them in an unexpected way. One of the horses Yates had trained, a magnificent bay stallion, caught the eye of a wealthy rancher from Sacramento. The man was preparing for a horse race that offered a substantial prize, and he believed the stallion could win. He offered $500 for the horse, an extraordinary sum, and promised a bonus if the animal performed well in the race. Mr. Henderson agreed to the sale, and because Yates had done the training, he received a portion of the profit. $300 went into their tin box. As the 18th month approached, they worked with desperate intensity. Marianne barely slept, taking on every bit of work she could find. Yates pushed himself to the point of exhaustion, training horses late into the night by lantern light. 2 weeks before the deadline, they counted their savings. $2,700. They were still $300 short. Marianne felt despair creeping in for the first time since they had made their bargain. They had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and they were going to fall short. "We will find a way," Yates insisted, but even he looked worried. The answer came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Henderson, who had been watching their struggle with quiet admiration, approached them one evening. "I know you are short on your payment," she said gently, "and I want to help. My husband and I have discussed it, and we would like to loan you the remaining amount. You can pay us back over time with no interest. You have both proven yourselves to be hard workers and good people. We believe in you." Marianne burst into tears, overwhelmed by the kindness. "We cannot accept charity," she managed to say. "It is not charity, it is an investment," Mr. Henderson said, joining his wife. "You two have increased the value of my breeding operation considerably. The quality of our horses has never been better, and buyers are willing to pay premium prices. You have earned this help, and I will not take no for an answer." With the Hendersons' loan, they finally had the full amount. On the last day of the 18th month, Marianne and Yates rode into Columbia with $3,000 in cash. Word had spread that this was the day of reckoning, and a crowd had gathered outside the lawyer's office. Marcus Thorne was there, looking smug and confident. He clearly expected them to fail. Marianne walked up to him with her head high and placed a heavy leather pouch on the lawyer's desk. "Count it," she said. "Every cent of the $3,000 I owed you. Our business is concluded." The lawyer counted the money carefully while Marcus watched, his expression darkening with each bill. When the count was complete, the lawyer nodded. $3,000 exact, he announced. "The debt is paid in full." Marcus's face turned purple with rage, but there was nothing he could do. In front of dozens of witnesses, the lawyer took out the original contract, the one that had promised Marianne to Marcus since the day she was born, and tore it in half. "You are free, Miss Lewis," the lawyer said, though he glanced at her hand where she wore Yates's ring. "Or should I say, Mrs. Irving?" A cheer went up from the crowd. Many of the townspeople had suffered under Marcus Thorne's cruel dealings, and seeing someone best him brought them joy. Marcus stepped close to Marianne, his voice low and venomous. "You think you have won. You have made an enemy today." "No," Marianne said calmly. "I have made myself free. What you do with that is your choice, but I will never fear you again." She turned away from him and walked to where Yates was waiting. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around as the crowd applauded. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won their freedom. They rode out of Columbia that day with their heads high, returning to the Henderson ranch and the life they had built together. Over the following months, they paid back the Hendersons' loan, working with the same determination that had won their freedom in the first place. 2 years after their wedding, Mr. Henderson offered them a partnership in the breeding operation. He was getting older and wanted to ensure his legacy continued with people he trusted. Yates and Marianne accepted gratefully, and the business thrived under their management. Their first child was born in the spring of 1892, a healthy baby boy they named James. Marianne held him in her arms and marveled at how different his life would be from hers. He would never be anyone's collateral, never be promised to someone against his will. He would grow up knowing he was loved and free. Yates sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, looking at their son with wonder. "He is perfect," he whispered, "just like his mother." "He is ours," Marianne said softly. "Completely and truly ours. No contracts, no debts, just ours." As little James grew, the Irving family prospered. They eventually purchased their own land adjacent to the Henderson ranch, building a home with their own hands. Marianne's parents, freed from Marcus Thorne's shadow, reconciled with their daughter and became loving grandparents. The rift caused by the original contract slowly healed, though it took time and many difficult conversations. Marcus Thorne's influence in Columbia gradually waned. His cruel dealings caught up with him, and one by one, people found the courage to stand up to him the way Marianne had. He died alone and bitter 10 years after Marianne paid her debt, and few mourned his passing. 2 more children blessed the Irving household. A daughter named Sarah, born in 1894, and another son, Thomas, born in 1896. The ranch house filled with laughter and love, a far cry from the fear and desperation that had marked Marianne's early life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates took Marianne back to the creek where he had first told her he loved her, where he had asked her to trust him and run away. They stood together in the same spot, older now and worn by years of hard work, but their love had only grown stronger. "You ever regret it?" Yates asked, holding both her hands in his. "All the struggle, all the hardship we went through." Marianne looked at him, at the man who had risked everything to save her from a fate worse than death, who had worked beside her to build a life of freedom and dignity. She thought of their children, of the home they had made, of the respect they had earned in their community. "Not for a single moment," she said, rising on her toes to kiss him. "You gave me my life back, Yates. You showed me what it means to be truly free. Every hardship was worth it to be standing here with you now." "I would do it all again," Yates said, pulling her close. "1,000 times over, I would choose you." They stood together as the sun set over the California hills, two people who had fought against impossible odds and won. The contract that had promised Marianne to a cruel man since the day she was born was long since destroyed, but the promises she and Yates had made to each other, freely given and freely kept, would last forever. Years continued to pass in peaceful contentment. The horse breeding business expanded, gaining recognition throughout California and even in neighboring states. Buyers came from as far as Oregon and Nevada to purchase horses trained by Yates Irving, knowing they were getting quality animals handled with skill and care. James grew into a strong, thoughtful young man who loved working with the horses as much as his father did. Sarah inherited her mother's business sense and kept the ranch's accounts with meticulous precision. Young Thomas showed an early talent for training, his patience and gentle touch with even the most difficult horses reminding everyone of Yates. The Henderson Ranch eventually passed fully to the Irvings when Mr. Henderson died peacefully in his sleep in 1898, with Mrs. Henderson following him just 6 months later. They left the property to Yates and Marianne in their will, recognizing the love and dedication the couple had poured into the land. It was a bittersweet inheritance, mourning the loss of dear friends while honoring their legacy. Marianne often thought about the strange turns life could take. She had been born into bondage, promised away before she could even speak, destined for a life of misery with a cruel man. But one chance encounter with a cowboy outside a general store in Columbia had changed everything. Yates had seen her not as property or collateral, but as a woman worthy of love and freedom. On quiet evenings when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, Marianne and Yates would sit on the porch they had built together, watching the stars emerge in the vast California sky. Sometimes they talked about their early days, the desperate flight through the mountains, the confrontation in the canyon, the long months of grueling work to pay off the debt. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped together, grateful for the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. "Tell us again how you and Papa met," Sarah would sometimes ask, climbing into her mother's lap even though she was getting too big for it. And Marianne would tell the story, never tiring of it, of how a cowboy with blue eyes and a kind heart had seen her carrying flour outside a general store, and decided in that moment that she was worth fighting for. She told her daughter about courage and determination, about standing up for yourself even when the odds seemed impossible, about the power of love to overcome even the most daunting obstacles. "Will I find someone like Papa?" Sarah asked once, her young face serious. "You will find someone who sees you for who you truly are," Marianne said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Someone who values your strength and your spirit, and you will know him because he will make you feel free, not trapped. He will add to your life, not take from it." "Like Papa did for you," Sarah said with certainty. "Exactly like that," Marianne agreed, meeting Yates's eyes over their daughter's head. He smiled at her, that same smile that had captured her heart years ago, and she felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt that first day. As the 19th century drew to a close, the Irving Ranch stood as a testament to what could be achieved through love, determination, and unwavering faith in each other. The pastures were full of fine horses, the barns well maintained, the house filled with the sounds of a happy family. Marianne's father passed away in 1899, finally at peace knowing his daughter was safe and thriving. Before he died, he apologized again for the contract he had signed all those years ago, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I was desperate and foolish," he said, gripping Marianne's hand. "I sold my own daughter to save myself. I will never forgive myself for that." "Papa, it is forgiven," Marianne assured him. "What happened made me who I am today. It brought me to Yates. I cannot regret that, even though the path was difficult. You did what you thought you had to do. Let it go now. Find peace." Her father died holding her hand, a slight smile on his face, finally released from the guilt that had haunted him. The new century arrived with hope and promise. James, now a young man of nearly 18, was courting a sweet girl from Nevada City, the very town where Yates had planned to take Marianne all those years ago. Sarah, at 16, was showing interest in expanding the business into cattle ranching. Thomas, at 14, was already breaking horses with a skill that amazed everyone who watched him work. On a warm summer evening in 1902, Marianne and Yates celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary surrounded by family and friends. The ranch was decorated with lanterns, and tables groaned under the weight of food prepared by neighbors and loved ones. Music filled the air as people danced and celebrated. Mr. Peterson, who ran the general store in Columbia, raised a toast. "To Yates and Marianne Irving, who taught us all that love and determination can overcome any obstacle. May they have 20 more years of happiness together and 20 more after that." "Hear, hear," the crowd shouted, raising their glasses. Yates stood and pulled Marianne to her feet, wrapping his arms around her waist as he had done countless times over the years. "20 years ago," he said to the gathered crowd, "I met a woman outside a general store who changed my life forever. I did not know then that helping her would lead to this, to a life fuller and richer than I ever imagined possible. Marianne, you are my partner, my love, my everything. Here is to the years we have had and all the years to come." He kissed her then in front of everyone, and Marianne kissed him back, not caring who watched. This was her husband, the man who had freed her from a terrible fate, who had worked beside her to build a life worth living, who loved her with a constancy that never wavered. As the party continued into the night, Marianne slipped away for a moment to stand alone in the pasture, looking at the horses grazing peacefully in the moonlight. She thought about the girl she had been at 22, staring out a window with hopeless dread, counting down the days until she would become the property of a cruel man. That girl seemed like a stranger now, someone from a different lifetime. Yates found her there, as she knew he would. He always knew where to find her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, slipping his hand into hers. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Marianne said simply, "and how grateful I am that you were not watching where you were going that day outside the general store." Yates laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Best clumsiness of my life. Though I will confess I was watching exactly where I was going. I saw you from across the street and made sure to bump into you." "You did not." Marianne turned to stare at him in delighted shock. "Yates Irving, you never told me that. I am telling you now," he said, grinning. "I saw you, and I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, even with sadness in your eyes. I wanted to talk to you, so I engineered a meeting. Best decision I ever made." "You schemer," Marianne said, but she was laughing. 20 years and you wait until now to tell me." "I figured 20 years was long enough to keep the secret," Yates said, pulling her close. "Besides, what are you going to do about it? Divorce me?" "Never," Marianne said fiercely. "You are stuck with me forever. Yates Irving." "That is exactly what I was hoping you would say," he murmured, and kissed her under the stars. The years continued to unfold with joy and occasional challenges, as all lives do. James married his sweetheart and built a house on the edge of the property. Sarah, surprising everyone, decided to become a veterinarian, one of the first women in California to pursue such a profession. Thomas took over the day-to-day operations of the horse training, his gentle skill with the animals becoming legendary. Grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with new life and laughter. Marianne and Yates became the patriarch and matriarch of a growing family, their love story told and retold to each new generation as an example of courage and devotion. In 1910, Columbia held a celebration for its 60-year anniversary as an incorporated town. The Irvings were invited as honored guests, their success story a source of pride for the community. As Marianne walked through the streets where she had once felt trapped and hopeless, she marveled at how much had changed. The saloons Marcus Thorne had owned were now respectable businesses under different management. The people who had once looked at her with pity now greeted her with genuine warmth and respect. "Things are different now," the current mayor said during his speech. "We have learned from our past, from the Marcus Thornes of the world who thought they could own people and control lives. We have learned from heroes like Marianne and Yates Irving, who showed us that freedom is worth fighting for, that contracts signed in desperation do not have to dictate our destinies." Marianne felt Yates squeeze her hand, and she looked up at him. He had gray in his hair now and lines around his eyes from years of working in the sun. But to her, he was as handsome as the day they met. More so, even, because now she knew the depths of his character, the strength of his love, the steadiness of his devotion. That night back at the ranch, they lay in bed together as they had for 28 years. The house was quiet, their children grown and in their own homes, though they all lived close enough to visit regularly. "You remember the cabin in the canyon?" Marianne asked suddenly. "Where we made our stand against Marcus?" "I remember every moment of that night," Yates said. "I thought I might lose you. It was the most terrifying night of my life." "But I did not lose courage because you were there," Marianne said. "You made me brave, Yates. You still do every single day." "You were always brave," Yates corrected gently. "I just helped you remember it." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms as they had done thousands of times before and would do thousands of times more. More years passed in contentment and peace. The ranch prospered through good times and bad, weathering economic downturns and droughts because the foundation Marianne and Yates had built was solid. Their children married well and raised good families. The grandchildren grew strong and capable, learning the value of hard work and integrity from their grandparents' example. In 1915, on a beautiful spring morning, Marianne woke to find Yates already up and dressed. It was unusual, as they typically rose together to watch the sunrise. "Come with me," he said mysteriously. "I have something to show you." He led her out to the pasture where they had first talked about their dreams, back when they were young and fighting to build a life together. There in the middle of the field stood a beautiful gazebo, freshly built and painted white. "Yates, when did you do this?" Marianne asked in wonder, walking up to examine it. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with intricate detail work carved into the posts. "James and Thomas helped me," Yates admitted. "We have been working on it for months, keeping it secret. I wanted to give you something special, a place where we can sit together and watch our grandchildren play, where we can remember all we have been through and all we have built." Tears filled Marianne's eyes. After 33 years of marriage, Yates still found ways to make her feel cherished and loved. They sat together in the gazebo as the sun rose higher, painting the California sky in shades of gold and pink. Marianne rested her head on Yates's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and thought about the incredible journey that had brought them here. From a promise made before she was born to a promise freely given and joyfully kept. From fear and bondage to freedom and love. From a dusty encounter outside a general store to a lifetime of partnership and devotion. "Thank you," Marianne whispered, "for everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For fighting for me when I could not fight for myself. For loving me every day for 33 years. 33 years and counting," Yates said, kissing the top of her head. "And I plan on many more, my love. Many, many more." And they had those years, blessed years filled with love and laughter, surrounded by family and the legacy they had built together. When Yates finally passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1928, at the age of 76, Marianne grieved deeply, but also felt profound gratitude for the life they had shared. He had given her 40 years of love, 40 years of freedom, 40 years of being truly seen and valued. She lived another 8 years, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, all of them living proof that one act of courage, one cowboy willing to stand up for what was right, could change not just one life but generations. The ranch continued to thrive under family management, a testament to everything Marianne and Yates had built together. When Marianne passed away in 1936 at 70 years old, she was laid to rest beside Yates on a hill overlooking the ranch. Their story became legend in Colombia and beyond, passed down through generations as an example of true love, courage, and the power of standing up for what is right. The contract that had once promised her to a cruel man was long since dust, but the love story it had inadvertently created lived on forever, inspiring everyone who heard it to believe that freedom is always worth fighting for, and that true love can overcome even the most impossible odds.